Greetings and welcome to the 11th episode of Oblivion House Mod Hunters, where we look at 3 different house mods each week as we try and find your dream home in Cyrodiil. As always, I'm your host Dark Elf Guy, and we do have a number of cool looking and scenic house mods for you today. Most of them are actually based around the Nibenview Bay, but before we get to all of that, I'll just remind you guys again that you can find the download links for each mod that is shown in this video down in the video description below. And starting out, we have our popular house mod of the week, and this week we have Vaernlor Manor by JBVW. And this is a large and scenic estate located not too far north of Breville, and it's pretty close to the Nibenview Basin as well. And like a proper estate, it does come with a gated gardens with a central fountain, a stable house for keeping horses, or a carriage if you happen to have one of those. And this is a fairly beautiful looking grey stone manor with numerous balconies, towers and turrets. And the estate also comes with a charming backyard with another fountain and a balcony. And you'll actually notice that this estate, sort of sits on a bit of an overlook, and although much of the view is, obscured by the trees and all that, you can still make out the Nibenview Bay down far below. And the landscaping here is, truly scenic with a beautiful and lush forest to take in. I believe this estate is actually in the Great Forest. And you can see this estate on the map here, and it's not too far, from Breville, and it's a pretty short commute overall into the city. And of course, the estate does, come with a map marker for fast and instant travel back and forth. And going inside, you'll find a lovely grand foyer, and also entry hall with a double staircase that leads right up to the second floor. And there's also a set of rooms out towards the back here, including a fairly large lounge with a fireplace and chairs. Though it's a bit sparse otherwise, but there's a nice assortment of decorations in here, as well as some, nice Victorian furniture. There's also a small library on the first floor, including a few bookshelves with some decorations, but there's also some room for you to add your own items if you so desire. And one of the things that's, really worth pointing out about this house mod is that it does have a large number of secret passageways. I'm only going to be showcasing this one right here because it's, super obvious, but there are over a half dozen hidden panels and secret rooms throughout the entire manor, which is, part of what makes this house mod so unique. And most of these secret rooms are actually going to be like display halls like this one, or storage chambers, or small studies and things like that. And as you might expect with a manor of this size, there's also a dining room towards one wing of the house, which comes with its own little entry hall with a pleasant fountain and a small indoor garden that just, takes full advantage of the natural daylight streaming in from the windows here. And just a small bit of, pleasant nature that your guests can enjoy before sitting down to a full-course meal. And here you can see the dining room proper, and it's not massive per se, but the table here can seat a few guests, and the decorations are certainly quite charming. They kind of remind me of, sort of Victorian-like furnishings. And, of course, there's a pretty large kitchen in here too, with a fairly sizable working space, a cooking fireplace, counters, and food scales, and of course there's a pantry just off to one side. And there's even a small eating area for the servants, since, they do need to eat occasionally. Remember kids, not feeding your servants is a very bad thing. Always remember to feed your servants. And you also find a display hall and armory off to one wing of the house, which comes with a variety of unique display cases and the same sort of Victorian style furnishing as, the rest of the house. And I actually think a few of these display cases have already been occupied with things like weapons and miscellaneous items, but there is still naturally, space for you to add your own items as well. And you can sort of see that right here, is that some of these display cases will have things like daggers or staves or longbows in them. And, I didn't check, but some of these might be static, so I don't know about that. But anyway, on the second floor, you'll find most of the manor's bedrooms, with about 2 or 3 guest bedrooms, and these are, like the rest of the house, warmly finished. Most of them have at least one fireplace to keep them, sort of warm, since this is a cold, grey stone-like manor. That's, kind of important. And there's also naturally a master bedroom, which is, fairly massive, including lots of space, as well as some display cases and a rather interesting looking bed. And You know, something I've just got to say about this manor is that it really does have a unique aesthetic charm to it. This isn't one of those, you know, dime a dozen house mods that all look alike. This one is incredibly unique throughout its design, whether it's the secret passageways, the furniture with its Victorian style, or the building itself with its tall windows and grey stone architecture. This entire manor feels incredibly unique in a classical sense, and if you're looking for a distinctive home to live in, you know, this one certainly takes the cake. And anyway, one of the last rooms I want to show off here is one of the main lounges, which you'll find often to the right wing, I think it is, which comes with some seating areas, a fireplace, because, you know, every room in this house has one, and also a musical stand where you can, you know, find a piano that you can play on if you so desire. And sort of in conclusion, this is a fantastically lovely estate with a lot of unique architecture and furnishings, you know, secret passageways and scenic gardens. It does come with a few, you know, convenience features like a map marker for quick and easy transportation, a short commute to Breville, a number of display and storage halls, and, you know, lots of guest bedrooms for companions. That said, I didn't really see any altars for enchanting or spell making, but, you know, I may have missed them. There are an awful lot of secret rooms after all. And in any event, if you're looking for a stately estate or Victorian style home, you know, this is definitely one house mod that you should check out, and I'd highly recommend it. And sort of moving on to our new house mod of the week this week, we have Dandelion Farm by MsFrankenstein. And before you can actually move into your new home, you're first going to need to purchase the land deed and key from the fellow here in Skinningrad for a smooth 4,000 to 5,000 septims or so, you know, depending on your mercantile skill. And once you have ownership of Dandelion Farm, you'll find it a short ways north of Skinningrad, and where Vaernlor Manor was, you know, a massive and sprawling estate, you'll find this is a beautiful and scenically rustic farmstead with a lot of charming character. The house and surrounding lands are, you know, just absolutely covered in beautiful flowers, and you also find a number of farm animals on the property, as well as a small vegetable garden and even an orange tree out back, you know, that's just ready for harvest. And it's really just a sort of idyllic countryside home. And you'll even find a bit of a story behind the place as well, as you'll see here in a moment. Apparently the previous owner left their journal, you know, just sitting out on a table, and it provides a really lovely story, I would say, giving, you know, some touching details to flesh out the scenic abode and give it just a little bit of history. And you can see Dandelion Farm on the map here, and it's a pretty short commute back to Skinningrad, and it does naturally include a map marker for quick and easy transportation from just about anywhere. And inside you'll find a really lovely and quaint home to call your own, already sort of pre-decorated with a lived-in feel. And, you know, not only that, but it does also come with a set of house cats as well to, you know, sort of keep you company. And this small home is actually composed mostly of just this one-room cottage, which is divided into a small cozy alcove with a fireplace, and a small study area with bookshelves and a desk, as well as a commons area with dining, in terms of, you know, so a simple two-person table, a cooking fire with a rat already on the, you know, roast, and a kitchen with a fairly sizable preparation area. And it should be noted that most of the objects here are static, so, you know, they can't be moved, which, as I've mentioned in the past, is particularly a good thing with Oblivion's wacky physics engine. But in any event, there's also a small loft here that, you know, serves as a bedroom with a nice overlook, and it provides an interesting view of the cottage proper. And, you know, it has to be said that this is really just a quaint and charming home, and it's quite beautiful in its simplicity and cozy with the amount of detail that's gone into the decoration here. Overall, Dandelion Farm provides a really scenic and rustic cottage for you to call home that's already, you know, sort of pre-decorated with a lot of cozy charm. It does include a map marker, as well as a number of safe storage containers, a recycling bin for getting rid of items you don't want anymore, a number of farm animals, including pet cats, and of course, you know, there's some lovely landscaping with flower beds, a vegetable garden, and an orange tree. You know, simply put, Dandelion Farm is a perfectly scenic home that's ideally suited to characters with, you know, simple needs, or those who just want to live in a rustic and, you know, beautiful location, which, you know, this most certainly is. And finally, for our underrated house mod of the week this week, this time around we have Nibenview Estate by JDK09. This is another house mod that requires you to purchase it first, and you'll find this gentleman, you know, standing around one of the taverns in Breville, and he'll sell you the deed and key to the estate for a mere 100,000 gold. This is probably one of the more expensive house mods that we've looked at in this series, you know, but, you know, given the size of the estate, it is, you know, fairly balanced, I would say. And anyway, you can see Nibenview Estate here, and it's a pretty massive property, really. There's a fairly large stables out around the side, and not shown here, there's also an archery range down there. And as the name of the estate would imply, it does indeed overlook the Niben Bay. The main house here is a fairly large coral-style upper-class manor, but you also find a fairly large and scenic set of gardens right next to it, with various statues of the 9 divines, surrounded by beautiful flower beds and flowering trees, adding a nice bit of landscaping to the property. And of course, the gardens offer what is probably the best view of the Niben Bay, so you can, just sit back and enjoy the peaceful and serene nature around you, while taking in the view. And of course, this isn't everything. The estate also comes with 2 detached cottages that stand independently from the main manor, along with a small docks area which can be used to park your ship if you happen to have one. And these small houses are actually, servants' quarters, where you can keep your staff if you have any. And, you can see the estate on the map here, and it does include a map marker, plus, a short commute to Reveal, so long as you don't mind, swimming there. But the map does show one of the main problems with this mod, and that's the fact that it is in a rather conflict-heavy location. There's a lot of mods that use the same general area, so conflicts are going to be, highly likely, especially with anything that changes the landscaping. But anyway, real quick, just to show off the servants' quarters here, the 2 houses both come with about 3 to 4 beds, and, could potentially house quite a few servants. And having shown that, let's just, move on to the actual manor, which has a nice-sized main entry hall with a few decorations, and not a whole lot of furniture. There's a few chairs where guests can wait. And also on the first floor right here is the main kitchen, which is, fairly sizable, and includes a number of tables and counter spaces for preparing food, as well as a few ingredient barrels. And upstairs you'll find the alchemy lab, which includes a set of alchemical equipment and chests for every ingredient in the game. And, just keep in mind, these are master level alchemical items, but the mod does come with a version without them, a non-cheat version if you will. But at the same time, you are paying 100,000 gold for this place, so that's not, really that overpowered if you think about it. But anyway, also on the second floor here, you'll find the grand dining room, which comes with a fairly large table that can seat quite a few guests, and there's also a small bar area off to the side. And on the top floor, you'll find your own personal quarters away from the public areas of the estate, including a small antechamber with display cases for showing off items and a breakfast table. And you also find the magical lab up here as well, with a study that includes altars of spellmaking and enchanting. And again, the non-cheat version does not include an altar for spellmaking and enchanting, but at the same time, I think it's a little ridiculous to, pay 100,000 gold and not get a altar of enchanting and spellmaking, but that's just my personal opinion. In addition to the display area in your personal quarters, you'll also find a fairly sizable display hall, including display cases along the upper levels and display tables lower down. And the bottom floor actually appears to contain pedestals for armored display mannequins, but I don't believe any are actually included in this mod, presumably. If you have a mannequin mod installed, you can use these pedestals as a convenient place to, put any mannequins on. And anyway, there's also a full-scale basement, which basically acts as another display hall, with dozens of tables that you can use to display items, artifacts, armors, and weapons. And of course, there's also a lot of storage down here for storing stuff, with several safe chests that you can use and other containers. The manor does also come with one NPC, a smith with her own shop in the basement, but you'll find she doesn't actually have any bartering gold. Really, she's just there to repair your weapons and armor as needed. Finally, the last thing I wanted to show off here, this estate also comes with a training room where you can, pick what kind of foes you want to fight, namely of the goblin variety, and you can hone your skills by killing them. And of course, once they're, actually dead, the corpses disappear, so you can't actually loot them. It's mostly, to just train your skills. And in conclusion, Nibenview Estate is a truly underrated gem. Not only is it a large and lovely estate with some really nice landscaping and scenic views of the Niben Bay, it also comes with a lot of convenience features like a map marker, altars of enchanting and spellmaking, numerous guest beds, an alchemy station, a repair smith, vegetable gardens, which we didn't actually show here, and a training room. It's also a fairly balanced house mod with the 100,000 septon price tag, ensuring that you have to earn your home instead of moving in automatically, and the non-cheat version, satisfies any purist demands that you might have. And, to be honest, I'm kind of baffled as to why this mod isn't more popular. It was released in 2006 after all, and yet during that entire time has garnered very little attention. You know, perhaps that's due to the conflict-heavy location, but if you're not running any other mods in the area, I would, highly recommend checking out Nibenview Estate. And anyway, that wraps up our episode of Oblivion House Mod Hunters for today. We'll be back again next week, and we should also have the 4th episode of Oblivion Modding Showcases finished in the next week as well. So that's something you have to, look forward to. And anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time with our next batch of mods.